It's gonna be, they're gonna recycle their water. That's what you're concerned.
The next item is, we've had a little bit of discussion on, and this is a letter, it's pages 49 through 52. It's a letter from the Binkley and Associates, the engineering, on recommendations for maintenance, I'm gonna call it, or capital improvement projects. So I will open it up with that. Any public comment on this letter?
It says it all.
I agree with that. Yeah. Anybody else?
Broken.
Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the board for board comment. Start with Emery.
Page 50, conclusions, that says it all. We need to do something about, I don't know, we got a manager.
Yes. Russ?
There was some talk at some point that, not that we have a whole lot to do with it, but that the board was gonna be able to see our barges. I'd still like to see them, that's the only comment I got on this whole thing.
Okay, you want to see the barge out of the water?
Yeah, I really do.
Okay. Dan?
My only concern, I've already raised it, was that when will we see a priority list on this? In other words, she's mentioned all these items, but they need to be listed out as to how we deal with each of these items.
The priority.
Yes, the priority list. And it seems to me they need to be worked on right away.
Jim?
And the only thing that I caught in all this was talking about
What page are you on, bud?
2050, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It says that when the staff or whomever pulled, this is what I'm reading, and I'm not sure if it's true, if I'm getting it correct. It says when they remove the floating pumps off of the barge that they stored in a leaning over position, in quotations, and it says that, by God, those things probably need some money sunk into them to be fixed. So, I don't try to prioritize things, but if we have thoughts of getting that barge in the water, we probably put the cart before the horse and get the motors working before we, I won't say what my note says here.
Well, yeah, if you look at number 1, in priority order, recommendations in order of priority.
Yeah.
Number 1, that's the one.
That's the only thing I saw, and it was concerning to me that we did not do our due diligence as staff or whomever to ensure that we stored them correctly. What I envision is we said, to heck with these things, we throw them in the building. I don't know, speculation gets the best of us sometimes, but either way, they're broke, they need some servicing, and I was a little disappointed to see that we're the ones that could have created that problem.
Cleaning a three-phase pump motor would not be brain surgery. It wouldn't take very long. I don't care how big it is. It's pretty simple work. Cleaning a three-phase pump motor.
But
Good guy should be able to do 100 horses.
But they're afraid that the line's got oil on it. Electric lines.
So that's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Just got to heat it up.
The hard part, or the expensive part, is getting somebody out, getting them pulled, taken down to the shop, and fixed and back installed. I mean, I don't know that they're going to do it there on site. They're probably going to want to pull them and run them down there, I have to assume. And they might.
I mean, some electric motor shops, I don't know who's on the, I'll say, but they'll come out fully motor. I'm
Right.
sure if they're there, sitting on a barge, they can pick them up off of a barge, and usually they can pull the motor off of the pump and outside.
Yes.
So that's, I agree that when I talked to you about this before, the priorities, I just really get nervous, the fact that we are relying on one pump from intake right now. And I know we have the backup wells, but I also know from memory or conversations that the wells will only need a small percentage of what we need. It's been hot for a couple of months up here, so that's what scares me if we had two things. And so to me, these are all a huge priority, and I know that repairing the intake pumps and redoing those panels, it's a lot of money, but I get nervous at night thinking about, okay, what happens if, I go through those scenarios. So to me, this whole thing is a priority, and if you want to come back and say, okay, we can get this done for $30,000, and so the barge is, I'll say, water ready, I'm good with that, but I also, if we have the barge water ready, I would like it to be in the water ready, not saying we have to put it in the water, da-da-da-da. And with the level of staffing you have right now, that compounds the problem of, getting it connected, or so we need to have almost like an emergency plan of, if we are down to the staffing levels that we have at hand, how would we connect that? Who could connect it? Or do we have to have somebody in reserve at 911 put the barge in the water.com type thing, So those are the things that we need to look at. And I remember going to the intake building a few years ago, and I mean, it was pretty shabby. It's almost embarrassing to have that kind of, our stuff in that kind of condition, which I have no clue what it will cost to repair or replace and upgrade the panels and get that one pump in working order. I have no clue what that will cost, but I think it's something that this district needs to look at as a priority for, ensuring we have a water source for the community. So that's just my thoughts,
And also the casings coming up from the water, the lake.
Yeah, getting them deeper, you mean, or what?
Well, they said they're in bad shape,
Yeah.
so.
I want to make sure that unless there's other direction from the board, that we're speaking clearly with each other on what the next order of business is, okay? Getting the pump repair company out here is not something that I've got to wait on bids or anything like that from, and bring it to the board for approval or anything else. That will be within my authority in normal expenditures to get somebody to get those pumps serviced and ready to go, whether they're on that barge with new pontoons, whether they're on the other barge, pick them up, set them on there and be ready to go, okay? Doing the fabrication of that, of the barge to hold the pumps. Unfortunately, I am inclined to make that existing barge work. I'm not, I think it's going to be a real stretch to make that other barge, to cut into that other barge and figure out how to get that pump system welded on there. You can visualize it as just a mechanical person, but to actually do the structural and everything else, I think they're going to engineer it to the nth degree, and you're going to be looking at a big expense. For them to put their stamp on it and say, okay, this is how I'd engineer it, you're basically looking at a new, a new barge. But that's what happens when we just go out and buy a used barge from somebody, because we got a vision of how we're going to do it. That's what we got. We're in the middle of those two things. So I'm not really excited about spending money on new pontoons for it, but I think it's the right barge. It serves the purpose. I mean, you tie the two of them together and you go. It's just not convenient. As far as the options for what's going to happen with the controls, electrical controls, the control valves, the level sensing equipment, the shutdown equipment, the pump, the tubes, all of that, all of those need to be laid out and looked at, and in what order, and what can be done with a full lake, what can be done with an empty lake. Is it really going to cost that much more to have a contract for the electrical and then come back and do the pump tubes at a later date? Because, you know, you get an economy of scale with a bigger project, but then also, sometimes you just can't wait, you gotta get it done. But it's an engineering exercise, really, to lay all that stuff out, and that's the money that's been approved in the budget. I've gotta get proposals and bring a contract to the board to look at that, because it's a, you know, so I mean, it's a priority, but don't expect to be looking at plans in 4 months of what the next step is. We can ask the engineering firm to do that, to expedite the result, because it's urgent, but we're gonna pay for it, and we ask them to expedite it. Just,
Well, listening to you kind of, I'll say, break out the two projects. So to me, the barge is moved up in priority. And I would say in the next 30 days, the priority is to, can we get any labor here, operations labor? Because that's a key priority. And right parallel to that, not any below it or whatever, just next to it is the barge. We need to have that barge ready to go. So, you know, and understanding that it will take a longer time to plan all the work at intake, then that is why I'm saying that would be my priority. That would be my suggestion of priority duties right now, so, yeah. I mean, that, you know, we gotta have it ready to go, because we know we need to have that barge ready to go. So, you know, and understanding that it will take a longer time to plan all the work at intake, then that is why I'm saying that would be my priority. That would be my suggestion of priority duties right now, so. You know, I mean, that, you know, we gotta have it ready to go, because we know that the barge will maintain our water supply when we need it, and if it's a little bit lacking, then we can put on the wells for emergency and supplement it that way if necessary, to keep the community whole. So,
Have we been after those guys yet or not?
yes.
We did. Yeah, can I ask another question? There's something came up, and I think it might pass it by. First of all, Brenda has gone through some of this stuff too, and she might be able to help you. Maybe she's already done some of this when the last time Binkley sent a letter out very similar to this. If I'm trying to remember as you were talking almost, at the 625-foot level, if I'm not mistaken, that's 115,000 acre feet. And 115,000 acre feet is when, that's right.
When it shows up.
So when you're looking at those things, that if you've got a pipe that you're trying to put down there to 600 acre feet, that may change some of the priority in looking at that float and that pipe. And I don't have that in my head,
Right,
because I heard.
I can follow what you're
It's
saying.
heard.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but, thank you, Wes. Thank you. Any other comments? So I guess I'm gonna go with Henry. What do you feel are the priorities?
Well,
Other than the, Harry has been asking some other questions. We're taking this existing barge, right? And we're gonna have, just for clarification, you're gonna have an engineering company engineer something to hook to it? Is that what we're doing? What are we doing? Exactly. All I'm thinking about is product liability and who's responsible. Because once you take an existing product, like the barge, and you decide to modify it, then we approve that modification, or they're engineering that modification. Because it's still got that product liability law, you know. The existing barge may not have sunk, or may not have drowned, but the new thing we're inventing may have liability for it.
river priority, this is a great conversation.
What's that?
It's a good conversation, because we keep going back over the same things, and it's helpful, because it's a complex problem. The floating barge,
Yep.
the old one, okay, steel top, steel pontoons, the first order of business would be to get that float.
Excuse me. when you say the old, you're talking about the very, very first one?
Yes,
Or-
the one that has the pumps on it right now, the one that has the pumps.
I'm with you, I'm with you. Okay, go ahead. I'm with you.
You know, 3 people in this board.
I've never seen
no
that, so
less,
that's a vision.
have not a clue what you guys are talking about, and we're really at a disadvantage.
Okay.
We really wanna see these things.
I can give you a Reader's Digest version.
I don't see it. I'm visual.
It's in the boatyard at Lake McClure, I can see it sitting
Yeah.
there.
Hey,
But to
look on
tell
the
you what it's
website.
like, it's almost like a pontoon boat.
Not good enough. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
all right. Well,
Yeah, anyway, but we're not asking the board to do any design.
I know, but we just
Okay.
like to know, make a logical decision.
Okay, and we're not asking anyone to determine the safety of any equipment or the functionality of it or anything else. We're basically saying that back before this drought, the district went out and bought a barge because there was.
Separate, you keep using the term barge. We had a barge, we bought a boat that was gonna connect to it, we're calling it
Okay,
a barge.
I'll call it pump float and barge, how's that?
It's two-piece system.
Pump float is the barge that has the 2 pumps on it, okay? Then there's the barge. The barge basically gave the operators a place to work, to have a piece of pipe to be able to connect on and connect it up and move it out. And there was no working room on the floating pumps. There was just nothing. It was just a deck, and you connect up to the pipe. That was it.
Electric motors.
Electric motors on a deck and electrical controls. And so they had planned to just have the boatyard move the existing pumps off of the float pump and set it on the new barge. Okay, and by new barge, it was new to them, it was used, and anyway, so that was the plan. But they weren't able to get there because the drought happened, and then it had to sit on the lake for 3 years, okay? There were concerns when it was launched about the connection, the way it was connected, and whether that functioned, because they had to come up with some funky welded hinge and some different things to make it work, and it